signal, so it looks like it's good.
Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Antry, Associate Editor of Audioholics, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. This is a question and answer show about home theater and audio video. And I'm sticking with that from last week because you said it was all right.
It was all right. I don't know that I love it, but it's all right.
Short and sweet.
It's a step in the right direction.
Okay.
We're gonna tweak it. Yeah, I don't even really have anything to say other than that. Any off-topic stuff to talk about, other than the fact that I'm not prepared for this podcast simply because I just was too busy.
No off topic is good because we have a plethora of questions.
Well, that's
and
the thing.
feedback,
I got home. You sent me stuff, and I heard people talking about the radio on about stuff that happened at Comic-Con. I was like, Comic-Con just happened. That's how the loop I am. And then you sent me like Comic-Con movie and an entertainment roundup. I'm like, you might as well not send me anything else because you know I'm gonna have to watch whatever trailers are on there.
All right. Well, there were fewer than expected because a lot of the ones that were shown at Comic-Con were apparently like only for the people there and not released to the public. Although, of course, they leaked online. Yeah. Particularly the Suicide Squad. I liked that one.
I didn't see that yet. The Batman versus Superman looks less crappy, like whatever. And it actually looks like it's picking up where, to me, it looks like it's picking up right after that battle with General Zod. That's what I'm thinking. And the question my father answered at the end of that movie, which was, who's going to clean all that crap up, is literally that's what he said, is really what the question that Bruce Wayne's trying to answer. So I kind of like that.
Yeah,
kind of like that. We'll see where it's going. I'm not sure I love what's his name as Lex Luthor yet. It's a little
Jesse Eisenberg.
He's a little whingy to me, a little whiny.
He's very Jesse Eisenberg.
Well, he can't help it. He is what he is, and there's nothing wrong with that. I like him. But he's not,
It's just, he didn't transform his persona to become a new character. Lex Luthor. It's like, no, that's Jesse Eisenberg.
I'm just going to be me with a wig, I guess. So
that's all right.
Which is fine. And I watched a little bit of the trailer for Ash versus the Living Dead, or whatever they're calling it. Which looks awesome.
Yes.
Because everything
because it's Bruce Campbell.
It's Bruce Campbell, and everything he does is awesomeness. And it's got Xena Warrior Princess in it. Shut up.
She's in everything these days. She's showing up all over the place.
Yeah, she was in Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. too.
That's
season 2, which I was excited to see her there. But
she's been on Salem all season, and
I don't care about that. Yeah. Let's talk about more things I care about. And I watched the preview for the new Walking Dead spinoff, which looks like it's for the people who like the Walking Dead but don't like major characters to die. So we're gonna family will. It looks like it's about this family. So the family, the family are gonna be okay.
I would laugh if that entire family is just wiped out in the first episode and it carries on with other people.
That is totally the way I would write that. But I am me. And no one hires me to do this stuff. So, anyways, the Comic-Con stuff that happened this week, and we'll talk about some more news later. But once again, this is AV Rant, the AV podcast, where we answer your home theater and audio questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. To ask, it's very, very easy. You can email us at rob@avrant.com, tom@avrant.com. Please email both of us, not just one. And if you're going to email just one, email Rob for sure, because Rob puts together the question list. But I generally know this when somebody, whatever, I generally know. Anywho, or you can go to Twitter at First Reflects for Rob, at avrant_Tom for me. The website is www.avrant.com, facebook.com/avrant podcast. That's all one word. And then G+, you can just look me up, Tom Andrew, if you want to. Really
and cross your fingers. I might happen to look there when I'm putting together the topic list, because sometimes I do.
Something there.
Once in a while, I get a little alert. Yeah. So
we record this podcast every Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. You can watch it live on YouTube or Google Plus. If you put me in a circle in Google Plus, I will put you back in the listener circle, unless I think you're somebody I know, in which case you might end up in a different circle. But you're generally not somebody I know. So anybody don't know that circles me, it doesn't sound like some sort of marketing spammer type. Gets put in the listener circle. They get an announcement every week that this is happening, usually seconds before it happens. So if you want to be here, 9 p.m. Eastern time, or if you can't be there 9 p.m. Eastern time because life gets in the way, and you still want to interact with us in some way, because remember, the podcast recording is a podcast session recording. We're not reading any comments because we're too busy with the questions that we have in front of us. But if you want to interact with us at about 11 p.m. Eastern time, we have a hangout, which will go any length of time from 5 minutes to an hour, depending on how things go. Last week it was more like 5 minutes. We've had longer than the hours in the past. So that's that. This week we have some listeners of the week. I forgot last week I was supposed to mention Ray as a listener of the week, but 2 weeks ago I mentioned that my wife bricked her phone. It's actually a soft brick. I didn't know that was such a thing. It's like foam, I guess. Anyways, it was still turning on. She basically did a system update, and it got hung up in the middle of the system update. Okay. So my wife was all freaking out. New phone, blah blah blah. I was like, well, let's just buy you one, whatever. I don't care. She said, no. Let's try to wait till October till the new Google phones come out because she wants a good phone, not a crappy one that I'm just going to get off of Amazon for $100. And I said, well, the only person I know like offhand that might be able to fix this, like help you troubleshoot it, is Ray. So I had her hit Ray up, and she was in the middle of talking to him when I got home, and then I finished going through it with Ray, and we basically kind of quote unquote rooted the phone and then put it back to factory stock and got it all fixed up, and now she's got a functioning phone again. So yay! Thank you, Ray, for helping my wife get her phone back.
Yes, there you go. That's very deserving of Listener of the Week.
That is a listener.
I didn't really know what it was when you said, I forgot to put Ray on the list last week.
Yes, Ray was very quick to remind me that I forgot. Lee, this is not our Lee. This is a different Lee. I mean, this person is our Lee too, but not
this is not Lee Overstreet.
The Overstreet Lee. He bought a Yamaha RX V475 receiver from Accessories for Less, and he let them know they heard about them from AV Rant, the website from AV Rant. Heard about the receiver probably everywhere. And lastly, we've got Deepon, who sent us a donation, and he did that by going to www.avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and buying us a cup of coffee, or giving us a PayPal donation of whatever amount that he deemed necessary. Now, he did that and then asked us a question, but Deepon and everybody else who's listening don't have to donate to get your question asked. I'm glad that you did. You're not getting your money back, but I'm glad that you did. But you did not have to. We will gladly answer your questions no matter how much or how little money or how no money you give us. Okay?
Well, thank you, Ray. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Deepon. Very nice.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we got some tagline suggestions. If in the Gary said smooth and edgy, should be. I don't know about that, dude.
that was clearly from last week's discussion.
That's not.
Wait. Which one of us is smooth and which one of us is edgy?
Clearly, I am the edgy one.
Okay, I mean, so by default, I'm smooth.
Well, yeah, and plus you shave your head, so there's that.
I do, yeah, that's true.
That kind of works on a
number
of levels. Ashley, AV Rant for all your AV and home theater solutions. Sounds like we're selling something, so. But it's good. It's kind of for all your home theater and questions, maybe AV and home theater questions.
Yeah,
something like that. Scott, AV Rant, the TNA of audio podcasts, which I love, but there's no way we can do it. The TNA can refer to a number of things, including tweeters and auto calibration. So it should be SNA, subwoofer, and
tweeters and amps. Could just be amps.
Amps, that's true. That's better than auto calibration. Or tinnitus, and what is this other word?
Adiabatic. That's when
adiabatic.
Energy transfers between two things without any heat involved. That's what that is, as far as I know. I don't know why that has anything to do with audio.
That's really special to get that TNA in there. Well,
I think maybe Scott was stretching. That one could have been.
Yeah, well, thank you, Gabe. We'll think about it. News items. We had Comic-Con, so we'll link up some stuff. Probably Rob will send me some more links over time. And over on Audioholics, a forum member, not a member of the Audioholics staff, reviewed 7 different pairs of bookshelf speakers and posted their review online. It is clear to me from reading through the bookshelf shootout review online that there was no level matching done in any way, shape, or form with these speakers, which is like step 1 in making sure that you're eliminating bias. Like, I don't even care whether or not you could see what speakers were going on. I don't care about that. But if you didn't level match, it's like almost completely useless. I mean, it as far as the comparison goes. Now, I don't, it's great that they went through the trouble to do this. I think it's great, but I can't believe that you didn't, like, he's like, oh, well, there's only a 1 dB. They used 2 receivers so they could instantly switch between the two. But there's only a 1 dB, adjustment on the volume on this, so there's, there wasn't that much, there's always going to be a little bit off. It's like, listen, if you did not use an SPL, a sound pressure level meter, then you clearly didn't even try. If you're just doing it by ear,
Well, I
it's
mean, it does say volumes are level matched as closely as possible to account for sensitivity differences while 10 tracks are played. So it was aware of it.
yeah. But if you had actually just level batched the receivers, then you wouldn't have to change from song to song because it shouldn't make a
Hmm.
difference. Which, you know what I mean? That shouldn't make a
Eh,
difference.
yeah, I don't know. They didn't give enough detail as to
Yeah, it's
how they were attempting to level
yeah,
match. So,
not a lot of detail.
but
Anyway,
yeah, it looks as though what they did was they took a pair of Focal Solo 6BE, which are actually like studio monitors. They're
yeah,
self-powered.
yeah,
They took a pair of those and basically used those as the reference point for all the other speakers. So all 6 other speakers were compared to that speaker, as opposed to like doing a round robin, which would be many permutations with 7 different pairs of speakers.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which is what we did when we did our 1,500 to $2,000 speaker shootout. What I did,
Hmm.
which we did, you know, and I actually changed them up so that anyways, yeah. It's a nice. You can read through it and just make sure that you read it with a grain of salt and know that the fact that you did not level match means that there's a bias based on loudness. Which, if there is a 2 or 3 dB difference, which could definitely have happened there, because we're not using an SPL meter, that one speaker is going to sound better no matter what you do. On top of that, if these are self-powered speakers and they're different distances, slightly different distances, just putting the volume knobs in the same place isn't going to help you either.
Yeah, these are ranging all the way from $100 a pair to like nearly $3,000 a pair. So this is not your typical set a price bracket shootout. This is like, nope, these are 7 different speakers of all different price ranges, and given sort of the pluses and minuses that were subjectively heard in the
Yeah.
listening test.
So you can take a look
Several
at it.
models that we talk about.
We've talked about a couple of these models.
Hmm.
Is it the Prime or the Ultra speakers? This SVS
The
Ultra,
SFS
Ultra,
in this shootout were the ultras
yeah,
at
the
$1,000 a pair.
$1,000 a pair. The
Hmm.
RBH, are some
Yeah,
RBHs
there's
in
a
there.
high level RBH, the
Mm-hmm.
reference 61s.
61s, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, anyways, take a look at it if you're interested. Tom, this is from last week now. Actually, this is from a while ago.
a couple of
Because
weeks ago. Yeah.
Tom sent me this. He actually submitted the question on my website at tomantry.com,
Oh, okay.
which is why you didn't get it. And he is looking to replace a pair of Snell E3 speakers that he's had since the 90s. Okay. Uh, so Snell speakers. He's
Yeah, Snell
considering.
was part of D&M,
Yes.
same company that owns D&M Rants, but Snell is now out of business. So you cannot buy new Snell speakers. They don't exist anymore.
Okay. Okay. He's considered the Revell M106s and the NOLA Boxer 2s. These are bookshelf speakers. We're selling the
Hmm.
$1,500 to $2,000 price per pair. He's also found a pair of Snell LCR 7XLs in that price range, which I reviewed 6 years ago.
Hmm.
Okay.
And they were already a kind of old speaker at that point. Like they
Yeah,
had
this
been
was an
around for a while.
upgrade.
Right.
The
Okay.
XLs were the upgrade to the LCR7, so they had
Okay.
increased bookshelf, increased drivers and
Hmm.
different crossover and stuff like that. And they were heavy as heck, if I remember. I actually had to go and look at the review and go, "Oh yeah, I kind
Yeah.
of remember those."
Hmm.
That's how long it is. Long ago it is. Anyways, so he was kind of asking me if I thought that they would be a decent speaker. Well, first of all, I haven't heard these other two speakers. This other guy, Tom, his name is Tom. My name is Tom.
Hmm.
It's like a confused. This Tom has auditioned both the Revell and the NOLA speakers, and he's liked them both. But he does not have the opportunity to audition the Snell LCR 7 XLs before buying them. Given how much they originally cost, which is about $6,000, and the
Hmm.
parts quality, do the modern $2,000 pair of speakers have any hope of keeping up? He's already liked his previous Snell speaker, so should he just get the LCR 7 XLs? Um, it's just like I have no idea. I mean, how can I know this? To be honest with you, I thought those speakers were fantastic. That's fairly early, not super early, but that was fairly early in my reviewing career, and at that time, that was by far the most expensive speaker I'd had for review at that time. Since then, I reviewed much more expensive speakers, but at that point, they were certainly one of the higher quality ones. My real sense of them was that, wow, they sound fantastic. They do not sound $6,000 worth of fantastic. That's what I thought back then. I was like, I could not see myself spending $6,000 on those things. Couldn't see
Right.
it. They're super heavy. Yes, the drivers are very, very nice. The grill system was weird. I remember that.
Yep.
That
Yeah, you
it,
said you couldn't even barely take them off without damaging the front.
yeah, you're gonna have to expect that there's going to be some nicks if anybody's ever taken the grill off. And the drivers are beautiful, but they have I think they have to have the
Those
bullet.
are C's drivers, right? From
Yeah.
the company C's. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very good drivers. So I mean, you're probably gonna love them. I would guess. Now,
Well, I mean,
are you
Snell
gonna love
was
them more these other ones? I don't know.
Yeah, Snell was Joe D'Apolito. That was
Yeah,
his
so it's MCM
designs.
design. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's that woofer tweeter woofer design, classic design there. Unfortunately, it looks like the center channel version was just turned horizontally, which not the greatest thing as far as
that's what-
horizontal dispersion.
6 years ago, that's what everybody did, and today
Very
a lot
true.
of people still do it. So it's not
Yeah.
an uncommon design.
So, I mean, I've heard the Revel M106s. That's the only one out of these three that I've heard, so I can't make any direct comparison. I can tell you the Revel M106s are part of their Performa 3 series. That's actually sort of the newest series that they released a couple of years ago, but it's their middle line. So they have their Ultima 2, Performa 3, and Concerta, 2 or something like that. I think they're on another iteration of those. But it's the middle line. My opinion of those particular speakers was I like them a lot. I like almost all Revel speakers. But I thought they were sort of on par with maybe Ascend Acoustics SE series, which means they're maybe 2 to 3 times more expensive than an Internet Direct brand that I think compares quite well with them. Now, I mean, I love the Ascend SE series, so that's not a knock. It's just saying, hey, when you're getting a nicer finish, because they are definitely a nicer finish on them than a plain black texture paint, and they're being sold in stores rather than direct online, it's like, well, that's what happens. The price goes up by 2 to 3 times.
Yeah.
So it's not really a shock. So given that, and then given what the Snells used to cost,
And given my opinion of them, which at the time was that, they really sounded pretty dang good.
yeah, I mean, I'd be shooting in the dark, but I'd be guessing that the Snells, strictly in terms of like parts price, like the drivers that are in them, I would be quite confident saying the drivers that are in those Snell LCR7 XLs are probably more expensive drivers than the ones that are in the Revel M106s.
Yeah.
That much I feel pretty confident in saying, but I don't know how they sound. So, and I know nothing about the NOLA Boxer 2s.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Given what Rob just said, I would say go with the Snells. There we go. Done.
Yeah, I will just say in this price range, the Ascend Acoustic Sierra 2s exist. They're $1,500 a pair, and they are, I think they are definitely better than the Revel M106s. So if you already liked those, I can tell you the Sierra 2s cost the same and sound better than those, in my opinion.
There you go.
There's that, just to muddy the waters even more.
That'll help him out. Jordan, over on Twitter, Jordan enjoyed our discussion. I'm sorry, our suggestions for a $400 2.1 system. He found a Denon AVR for $50.
Yeah,
We're not allowed to know which AVR that is for $50, I guess. But
he did not mention the model number,
He
but
did get one.
pretty much any Denon for $50 is going to be all right.
If it's got all its channels working, I guess. I suppose. I don't know. I
That
would look
has
for
to be
burn marks.
used. I've
Yeah,
never
you
seen
think?
that in a store.
He found a Denon for $50 and was then planning on adding some Andrew Jones speakers in the mono price $60 subwoofer. Don't know
That's the
about
little
that one.
dinky 8-inch one.
Yeah.
That's.
I don't know about that.
When they say it's made of MDF, I think it's like half-inch MDF. Yeah.
He has also heard us mention an Onkyo subwoofer. He looked around on eBay and found many different models of Onkyo subs. What's the difference between all of them? Different levels of sock, I guess.
Well, I mean, Onkyo really only sold one subwoofer all by itself. That was the SKW204. And I've mentioned it on the podcast before because I think it's a pretty good little sub for its price point.
This is what, about $100?
Well, it's like 150 these days. They used to sell it at accessories for less for $100, and it'd be worth keeping an eye there because it might come back. Certainly at $100, I thought it was worthwhile. The other ones, because there's a plethora of model numbers, they're basically all the ones that came with Onkyo's home home theater in a boxes.
Yeah.
Like he's saying, he's finding these on eBay, so people are just selling the subs separately from the home theater in a box packages. The only one I would really consider is the SKW 550 that came from one of the THX packages, and it's basically equivalent to the SKW 204. All the other ones are either smaller 8-inch drivers, smaller boxes that can't play as low, or lower power amps that can't play as loud. So there's really no reason to consider any of those. So the 550 or the 204 are the ones I'd look at.
Yeah. All right. Or don't, which is what I would recommend. Don't look at any of those. And definitely don't look at that. I looked at that model price and like my computer like slapped me. Like literally like a hand came out, slapped me, and said, "Stop." It's not a real subwoofer. They're lying. So whatever sub he ends up getting, is that still a better setup than say one of the 2.0? I'm sorry, 2.1 Vizio soundbars that comes with the wireless sub.
The Pioneer speakers they're just plain better.
Yeah, that's going to be better for sure. Now the 0.1, if you get that mono price one, it's probably about the same. But yeah,
I mean the wireless subs that come with the Vizio soundbars are not total garbage, which is saying
it's really
something.
a misnomer to call most of these things subwoofers. We have to just stress that they're really bass modules.
Bass drivers. Yeah.
They are adding the bass that the speaker certainly can't do. So with the soundbar at least. So when you put that, you end up having to put it out the front with all the speakers because you put it in place else. Then you can localize it because you're gonna have to cross it over super high. So yeah, it's not. These things aren't meant to be linear. They're not meant to. All they're trying to do is give you the mid range and a little of the upper bass because that's what your ear can hear really well. That's what the Vizio is going to give you. It's going to give you where the vocals are, and that little subwoofer is going to give you enough of a shake and a fart with all of whatever other noises it makes.
I actually think the Vizio ones are a little bit better than that.
Whatever.
No, I think they're a little bit. But no, if you got the Pioneer speakers and you got the Onkyo SKW 204 or that like Dayton Audio sub 1200 that we've mentioned, which is at the same price point. If you got those, I would say those are clearly better than the 2.1 Vizio soundbar. That's my opinion on that.
Yeah. So there you go. Yes, I agree. And if you were to increase the subwoofer budget substantially, what subwoofers would we recommend in the $300 to $400 price range? He's already looking at the HSU STF2 and the DefTech SuperCube 2000. Are there any others you should consider? Well, no. The HSU is usually the go-to recommendation at this price point. I didn't know that the DefTech SuperCube was still a thing. They still sell them?
Yeah. They still like their Supercubes. They're still claiming that somehow having extra passive radiators is any different in terms of output than having a port, which it isn't. But they still make that claim because they're like, we made it super tiny, but we put passive radiators on it. So now it can play louder and lower. I'm like, well, you could have stuck a port on there and it would have done the same darn thing. So not really, DefTech, not really.
Yeah.
No, the HSU STF2 is as far as you need to go, in my opinion, for $350. Like that's the sub. So
yeah, you can keep your eyes open for deals on open box stuff at SVS or even HSU
or Outlaw
subs. Or Outlaws.
I sometimes see. Yep. Yeah, sometimes see Outlaws subs out there for going used and refurbed and stuff like that.
Yep. I would keep your eyes open for all of those things, and then you would have an actual 2.1 setup.
Yeah. If you got an SDF2, that is like that is a night and day difference.
Yes,
I hate that term, but it is that.
It is true. Yeah. Ashley on Facebook he lives in South Africa, and the last time he wrote, he was all set to try the Energy Take Classic speakers and the Andrew Jones Pioneer speakers. Unfortunately, he discovered their availability is far more limited than anticipated. So now he's looking at the offerings from SVS, which are offered by a local online retailer.
Cool.
Which is nice.
Go SVS.
I wonder if they have the shipping and all that stuff. If it's online. Local online retailer. So I wonder
that's what
if
he said. Yeah.
Shipping or not. The return shipping stuff.
I'm sure it's up to them.
I actually would like to know what is the definition of a satellite speaker. What makes a satellite speaker different from a bookshelf speaker? Size. There you go.
And bass output.
Generally,
largely.
Which is directly linked to size.
I mean, strictly speaking, any speaker can be a satellite speaker because the term came from the subwoofer / satellite system, which all began as the first time we had 5.1. That's when we created subsat systems, which was prior to that, all speakers were aiming to be full range
Right.
because subwoofers weren't around and we didn't have a crossover from the speakers to the sub. So as soon as we said, okay, the subwoofer is now going to handle everything basically from 80 hertz on down, and the speakers only need to be able to play down low enough to match up with the subwoofer, then that became a subwoofer satellite system. So anything that is being base managed is technically a satellite speaker. But when companies like when companies like SVS say, this is our satellite speaker and this is our bookshelf speaker, they're basically saying this is the smaller speaker that can only play down to 80 or 90 hertz. Maybe that's optimistic even.
Yeah,
Maybe it only plays down to 100.
It might even be as high as 200 to 120 to 200. Some of the really small ones might be even higher than that.
Yeah.
But yes, so
because bookshelf speakers tend to still aim to play lower than 80 hertz.
If you put a speaker to your left and your right, it is a satellite speaker. I don't care if it's a floor to ceiling,
that's right,
line array with 300 tweeters and 20 mid-range drivers and 5 subwoofers in it. It's still a satellite speaker, because it's in the satellite position. Now, if you've crossed any speaker, if you cross any speaker over, it's technically a satellite.
That's right. Yeah.
Though, really, that's what it is. But when a manufacturer says they're offering your satellite, what they're saying is, it might as well put like a little logo on it. This speaker is smaller than it appears, because they're not going to put anything in reference to it, so that you can see how small. They're going to put a quarter next to it, so you can see it's only 5 quarters tall. Because a lot of times that's what they're very, very small. So that's what it's just like a speaker, normal speaker, nothing different about it. It's just small, generally speaking. That's when the speaker manufacturer talks about it. So, B, do the SVS satellite speakers have an internal crossover?
Yes, they do.
Certainly have something in there.
They are a two-way speaker.
Yeah, so they've got something there. Internal crossover means that they're not getting full range to all the drivers, right? There's a crossover there that splits it out in some way and maybe has a low-pass, high-pass filter, depending on what side of the frequency response it is. Are they able to be connected directly to any AV receiver, or are they like his Logitech speakers where they have to be connected to a package subwoofer? Yes and no, in order. Yes, they can be connected to any AV receiver. This is satellite speakers from SVS and most speaker manufacturers' satellite speakers. You have a satellite speaker package from a computer manufacturer or a directly marketed to the computer market. A lot of times there is a base module. You plug your RCA or 3.5 plug from your computer into the base module. There's an amp in there which it sends the stuff out to the actual speakers, and there's usually some sort of proprietary plug that goes along with it and wires you can't remove and everything else. That's what you're thinking, and that's not what this is. Speaker manufacturers make speakers. They don't make amps. Sometimes they do, but then they catch on fire. But this one is just a normal speaker. That's all it is, okay? C, or 3, or whatever. Ashley's room is very small. With the SV... Did he say how small it was?
Bedroom small? I don't remember the
let's go with bedroom
dimensions. Small. He describes it as very small. So
with the SVS Prime Satellite 5.1 speaker package that includes 5 Prime satellites plus an SV1000 subwoofer be a good choice, or should he opt for the 5.0 Prime bookshelf speaker package? If you went the bookshelf speaker package, you would need to save up to buy a subwoofer later.
If it's a very small room where even your Logitech computer speakers were doing all right, the satellite 5.1 package would be fine, and that SP1000 subwoofer would be very fine. Very, very fine in a small room.
You will wonder where all that rattling is coming from.
And that SP1000 will play many sounds that the bookshelf speakers cannot. So you are gaining right away by having that subwoofer.
That said, if your budget allows, bumping up the front 3 or at least the mains to the bookshelf speakers, if it's in the budget, might not be a bad choice. Gives you a little bit more like configurability later on in life. When you're deciding.
He could always use the satellite speakers because this is a 5.1 package, so he could always use them as expansion speakers later too.
For a 7.
For 7, or an Atmos setup, or
hanging from the ceiling,
or in a second room. There's always a place you can put speakers like that.
All right, and the Prime Prime satellite package doesn't appear to be any dedicated center channel. Would it adversely affect the sound if he turned one of the satellite speakers to lay horizontally on its side? Uh, I mean,
Really, no.
technically, it does change the sound, but realistically, no, it's not going to
One
make a
of the
difference.
advantages of speakers being this small is that they come very close to approximating a point source.
Yeah,
The dispersion of these speakers is very even in all directions, left, right, up, and down, partly because they are so compact and that woofer is small and very close to the tweeter. And then the cabinet is very small, so you're not getting any sort of weird baffle off the front or diffraction off the edges, anything like that. It's like, nah, you can pretty much orient them any way you want, and the sound is coming out more or less in a nice hemisphere out the front of that speaker. So I would not worry at all about turning one of those horizontally. The SVS basically intends for you to do exactly that.
yeah. I think with most satellite speakers, they kind of assume that you're going to do something weird with them. That's just what they kind of assume because people who buy satellite packages, generally speaking, are either in your situation and they have a very small room, or they just want small speakers and they don't care about sound. So they're just going to do, you know what I mean? Seriously, that's what they're going to do. That's what happens. They're like, oh, I heard Bose is kind of overpriced, so I'll get these other really small speakers and put them in my great room and impress all my friends that I bought something that they had never heard of, and it's still whatever. I've been in so many rich people's houses where they have Bose speakers, and they're literally a foot away from their ceiling, and their ceilings are 20 feet tall, and the
Yup.
TV is right near the ground. And I'm like, why are the speakers so high? They're like, oh, that's the I kind of want them up and out of the way so that
Mm-hmm.
like, oh yeah, good. So basically everything you listen to sounds like God speaking to you, right? Everything none of the voices are coming from the TV. Oh, mostly I just use the TV speakers. I only turn that on when I have company. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for subjecting me to this. Can
God
we put
speaks
the
to you
TV
through
speakers back on, please?
God speaks to you through 2-inch drivers. That would be his choice.
I think so. I think he would speak to me through infinite baffle subs if he wanted me to pay any damn attention. That's what I think.
No, I can see being a little bit weirded out just by the visual of the tweeter being beside the little woofer that's there because it looks slightly odd when you're looking at it. But just put the grills on, you'll never notice. It's
don't worry about it.
entirely fine.
Yeah. All right. D.
D.
In the Prime satellite package, I already said that one. E.
Oh yeah.
On a different topic, he has a PS3 connected to his Sony PS3D monitor. This is a pretty cool monitor. This is one of the few monitors where you can actually you use the 3D to do full screen gaming. So with your friends,
Right, for two different people.
So
two
two
different people
people
are seeing two different images off
That's
the
right.
same TV.
So instead of getting left eye, right eye, you get left person, right person.
Yeah.
And you can play a racing game, and you're still getting, a full image,
And
which
I
is kind
think
of
like
cool.
2 or 3 games ever supported that. So
Who
yay.
cares?
But
They should have, because that is the one. If they had marketed 3D that way and said that was going to be a thing that everything did, I'd be like, okay, well, at least it does that. If it does that, then I'm okay with it. But it doesn't do that, so that's why it can die with fire. All the setup instructions have said to just set his PS3 HDMI video output to auto, but is this correct? There are options to set the output to either RGB or YPBPR, which is correct. The Sony PS3D monitor does not have a built-in TV tuner, so does that basically make it a PC monitor in reverse order?
okay.
Yes. So
Well, not entirely, because a PC monitor is expecting an RGB signal and nothing else.
yeah.
It is. So this is not a PC monitor. It's actually more capable than a PC monitor because it can accept an RGB signal. They say that right in the description. They're like, you can just hook your computer directly to it and send it RGB, or it can accept a YPBPR signal, which is the same signal that would come out of your cable box or your Blu-ray player or any other piece of video equipment. So it doesn't have a built-in TV tuner, so they can't call it an HD TV. It is
Right.
required to have a tuner to call it an HD TV, but it works just like a TV and a PC monitor. So
There you go.
it's kind of cool.
Now, if if Sony made the TV and Sony made the PS3 and Sony tells you to set the video output to auto,
Uh-huh.
I'm kind of okay with setting it to auto.
Yes.
So, because generally what it's going to do is it's going to take whatever your source is and send it through. And since the monitor can accept RGB or the YPBPR,
Hmm.
it's gonna be fine no matter what you do. So yeah, I would set it to auto. I would leave it there.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the PS3, out of all the devices I've ever had that have some sort of auto out setting, it has done the best. I have yet to hook it up to any TV where it has messed up the output signal.
I
I
am
can't say the same of the Xbox.
I am the same. I'm in the same boat. I every once in a while I look at that. I'm like, I feel like I should do something to that. But then I go, well, you know what? Let's just think about what advice I would give myself.
Hmm.
Has it ever messed up? No. Then don't touch it. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much what I would think.
Auto is fine, but if you must know, of course, since it is the PS3, there are two places that give you video output settings. One of them specifically says BD/DVD video output settings in brackets HDMI. That's one of the like settings menus, and that is only for playing Blu-ray and DVD discs. So it is specifically for that. That is the one that gives you the auto or RGB or YPBPR options. If you were to set it to something other than auto, which you don't need to, but if you were, it would be YPBPR because that is what any HD TV is expecting from a Blu-ray player. RGB is capable of outputting the entire video signal. The values can be anywhere from 0 to 255. So you have an 8-bit signal, so the values can be anywhere from 0 to 255. Video, like Blu-ray or DVD, only uses from 16 to 235. There is below black information, that's 0 to 15, and there is above white information, that's 236 to 255. So that's what your HDTV is expecting to get from a video source. So you want to set it to YPBPR. Down lower in the settings menu of the PS3, there's another option for, I think it's just video settings. I think that's what it's called. And those are for the game output, not for video output. There you have the choice of one of the sub options is because the games are always output as RGB. So there you have an option of limited or full. And limited mimics the YPBPR signal. It limits it to 16 to 235. But in RGB, you don't get any below black or above white. It just cuts it off at 16 to 235. There's nothing on the edges. Full gives you the whole range from 0 to 255. So if your display can accept a full signal, it's actually the preferred signal, but not all TVs can, in which case you need to set it to limited. So it's just unnecessarily confusing, but that's what's going on for the people who wanted to know the entire answer.
There you go. Auto. Everett is blind, but he would like his sighted family and friends to be able to enjoy an accurate image on his Sony Bravia CCFL backlit LCTV television. LCD television. I don't know how I did that.
Cold cathode fluorescent light? Is the L just light?
I think the L is just light.
Okay.
A light bulb?
Might be.
I don't know. Anyways, his nephew has made the adjustments in the Sony's user menu, and he has the THX app on his iPhone to help with the setup. Everett would just like to give us the settings a once over, and let him know if anything should be turned on, off, or adjusted. Do I have to read all these?
No, we can just anything that sticks out to you. I already emailed him with the answer.
I know you did. He's got the color temperature set to warm 2, which is good.
Which is correct.
The noise reduction is set to low, so if there's none off, low is fine.
Yeah.
The advanced menu, he's got black corrector to medium.
Now that is one I would change. This is one of those cases. The black corrector is basically sometimes it'll be called contrast enhancer. Or black level enhancer in other TVs.
I like to call it macro blocking includer.
I like to call it black crush because what it basically does is it takes all the stuff that should be really dark gray and it just turns it black so that the image looks more contrasty. Now the thing is, the correct setting is off because that gives you all the shadow detail. But on a TV that doesn't have fantastic black levels, setting it to low can subjectively look better to your eye. Will there be situations if you put up a test pattern where there be some really dark shades of gray missing now that you set it to low? Yes, there would. But who cares? If it looks better to your eye, that's fine. So I have no problem setting it to low, but I think medium is too high. It should be off or low. So that black corrector I would change.
The next setting is advanced CE, which I'm thinking CE is contrast
It's
enhancer.
color enhancer.
Ah,
That's what the C
he's got
stands
that
for
set to
there.
low, which is fine.
That's probably fine. Again,
Low
off is
or
technically
off.
correct,
Yeah.
but like it's one of those like if you have any ambient light in your room, probably setting it to low just subjectively looks a little nicer to your eye, and that's fine.
So let me see what else he's got here. Gamma set
Gamma,
to
yeah.
high.
Now that's a weird one
That is
because
odd.
I had to look up some of these Sony TVs, and they did have this thing where they had gamma settings from off, low, mid, high, and max.
Hmm.
Instead of giving you like a scale from -2 to +2, or better yet, something that actually tells you what sort of curve they're targeting.
Yeah.
Normally, in a pitch black room, the target for gamma is 2.4. In a well lit room, it's closer to 2.2. But they don't give you anything like that. They give you from off to max. The correct setting is off. It starts at a 2 point.
Really? Okay. You see, I would
Yeah.
have. I wouldn't have known. I would have to look that up.
Yeah, it
I would have
starts at a
guessed it was like the
2.4
medium,
gamma.
whatever the medium was. Something
Yeah,
like that.
exactly. So it starts at a 2.4 gamma if you turn it off, but if you're not in a pitch black room, then low will probably look better because that's closer to 2.2. So the thing is, he has his black corrector set to medium and his gamma set to high. That's not surprising because
They're
by
working
setting
against each other.
yeah, by setting that black corrector to medium, you've crushed a bunch of black. So then you raise the gamma to try and get some shadow detail back. So if you set that black corrector to off or low, then you can set the gamma to low, which is actually probably where it should be, and it should look correct.
So you clear white off, color space
Yeah.
normal,
Yup.
MPEG noise reduction off. I generally send that to off as well, the
Yeah.
noise reduction. But if you're got some source that is looking a little staticky, I
Mm-hmm.
guess is the term. It just has little not sparkles, but there's if you think about if you ever watch like an old VHS tape, kind of like that.
Yeah.
That's what MPEG noise is, okay? And you can bump it up for that. Now back at the top menu, which I kind of skipped most of this.
Well, the thing is, you want to actually set all those advanced options first because they affect things like your white level and black level when you're adjusting them. So you got to set all those advanced things first, which is counterintuitive because it's lower in the menu and you have to click a button to get to it. But once you have those set, then you can go back, and here's where you can use your THX app to adjust all the regular user settings.
So the rest of them were backlight, picture, brightness, color, hue, were the ones that I kind of
Yeah, you got to love that they called it picture because most of the things call that contrast. And what you're actually adjusting with that is the white level. So yay for confusing names. But that's what
I
picture
don't
is
even
in
know
this
what
case.
G4 for a hue might possibly
It's
be.
it's towards green by 4, right?
Okay.
The thing is, this is where your THX app will come
Yeah,
in handy.
this is where we can't look at the numbers and tell you
No.
what it means. It doesn't mean anything to us because every TV is going to have variance, and
And it
even
does
if you-
depend on your room because your
Yeah,
white
absolutely.
level and your black level are dependent on your level of ambient light. So one thing I told Everett is do the calibration in a dim or a dark room. Like, how are you going to be watching this TV at night? Everett isn't going to be watching, but how is his family and friends going to be watching it at night? And adjust the picture then. Because once you get to the bright, if you've got sunlight coming in, it's not going to matter so much if your colors are spot on. And what you're hopefully going to be able to do is only adjust the backlight because the backlight, theoretically, all it does is make the entire thing brighter or dimmer. It shouldn't shift any of the colors or alter your contrast between black and white. It should just uniformly raise or lower the entire light output. Of course, it doesn't always work like that, but what are you going to do? Recalibrate every time the sun moves in the sky? Like, it starts to get rid of every time a cloud goes overhead, break it out and recalibrate? Of course not. So just calibrate it when it's dim. The backlight when it's dim should probably be a bit lower than 8. It seems like he's probably in a fairly bright room.
Yeah, maybe.
Because I was just looking up other people's settings, and most people had it like 4 or 5 in a dim room, and that's not surprising at all. So that's my only advice there.
Yeah, so basically, every time I do a calibration, the first thing I do is go through the advanced settings and turn everything off that should be off.
Uh-huh.
Make sure that the color temperature is at warm or something similar, and
Yeah.
then I start the calibration.
Yep.
So do that. Go through what we said. Fix that gamma. That can't possibly
Yeah.
be right.
That
Fix
is
that
not
gamma. Turn off the black corrector. Your color temperature is fine, and then run that THX thing again and see how it looks at that point. Now, the second part of his question is that he has a Denon AVR X4000. Yay! And Audioholic's recent article about bass management, they say to set the LFE to 120 120 hertz. Everett's grandson looked into Denon's setup menu and only noticed an LFE adjustment from a range of 0 to -10. What is the setting that Audioholics is talking about, and how does he make sure it's set to 120? That's the LFE thing, the high pass.
That is the low pass filter for LFE. Yeah, that's what they're talking about there.
Completely different. Your grandson looked in the wrong place, which is totally fine because he never is going to find it. He's never going to find it, and it's fine because you don't need to set it because it's already at 120.
Yeah, I'll start with a very good news, which is that the default is already 120. So unless somebody somehow went in there and changed that, because Odyssey Auto Setup will never change that. It doesn't alter the low pass filter for the LFE channel. So unless somebody changed it manually, it's already at 120, and you probably don't need to worry about it. But the reason why your grandson didn't find it easily is because, of course, this is a wonderful AVR menu, and at the very top, there are a bunch of settings called audio. That's the main heading. So you hit setup on your remote, and then comes the thing that says audio, and you go, oh, audio, yes, I am adjusting something to do with audio. And you go in there, and there is a setting for low frequency effects. It's under bass. It goes bass and then low frequency. You go, oh, well, that must be what LFE stands for. And it gives you the scale from 0 to -10. And he goes, yeah, what's that? Well, that's a silly thing that's there because DTS, regular DTS, likes to leave the levels hot, and you can adjust whether DTS signals are adjusted to -10 so that they're actually even with every other kind of signal. That's what that stupid setting is there for. So confusing. So where you actually need to go is lower in the menu to the speakers sub-menu. So setup down to speakers, then into the manual setup, then into the bass, and within all of that, you will find the low-pass filter for LFE, which is already set to 120, so you don't need to worry about it. Yeah. Yay!
Yeah. And leave the other one alone. Because, yeah. All right. Now we're on to this week. Diego is moving into a new apartment and wants to set up his 2-channel system using his Ascend Acoustic Sierra Towers with raw ribbon tweeters, which makes me very happy right now.
Nice speaker.
He's been using a Peachtree iNova to power the system. Is that like a all-in-one majigger DAC thing, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a DAC and app system, yeah.
He wants to try something with room correction. He wants to add a pair of subwoofers in the future. He has no interest at all in Atmos 4K. It's not a priority. And other than the 2 subs, he doesn't intend to expand beyond 2 channels. He's mostly be looking at the Denon brand AV receivers over at Accessories for Less. He'd like to know if the older 4520, this AVR 4520, would be the best choice since it appears to have better DACs and amps. He's also looked at the X4100W, but is there a better model for him to consider?
You missed one in the middle, which is actually the least expensive out of all of these.
I think it's $600 now.
It's $600. The X4000.
Yeah, get that.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's the one you want. It doesn't do Atmos. It can sort of pass 4K, but it does not have HDCP 2.2. None of these options do, in fact. You have to go all the way up to the 4200, which is just coming out at the end of this month. So yeah, but it fits the bill very nicely, and it costs the least. So there's no reason to not get the X4000 in this case.
It does everything you want and a lot more. Next, he's been using his Mac to play lossless music files. He connected directly via USB to the Peachtree DAC. If he gets a Denon, will he need a separate DAC?
Nope.
Oh, does it have a USB on the front?
It has a USB on the front and the back.
I didn't see one on the back.
The X4000's got one on the back.
Oh, I looked at it online. I didn't see it.
Pretty sure. Well, it definitely has one on the front anyway.
I saw it on the front, but I didn't know whether or not it actually.
But more than that, it has AirPlay built in.
Yeah, but I bet he wants to hardwire it because AirPlay might.
AirPlay's lossless.
Yeah. I have a feeling anybody that's using a Peachtree is going to not trust that. He'd rather just plug it directly in.
Well, you should trust it because it's true.
I'm just saying. He's going to want something with the USB port. That said, does a Peachtree have a line out? Because if you really like to use your Peachtree, plug in the Peachtree and plug it into the Denon. You could do it that way too.
But you don't need a DAC. Why would you need a separate DAC?
I don't know.
Taking stuff off the Mac.
He's got it. I'm not saying go buy one.
Does the Mac have Does the Mac have an HDMI or an optical output? Because those can plug straight into the X4000 as well.
I don't know which Mac he's got. He didn't say that. It just says Mac.
Well, it must
have a Mac.
It must have either HDMI or a DisplayPort, either of which can plug straight into the X4000.
There you go. Look at all your options here, dude.
Yeah. Don't need a separate deck.
You don't need a separate deck. The setup will be in his living room, which is open to the dining area and kitchen. He sent us a diagram. Would like to know how we would position the speakers for and seating for optimal performance.
Yes.
You have a problem with that. Now this is an issue.
Well, I'll ask the first question is, are you like me and never use your balcony? Because I never use my balcony, and if you never use your balcony, then this will be easy. If you do use your balcony, this will be hard.
How do you feel about actually going in and out of your bedroom? Because there's a door that you may or may not be able to access. My computer, it did something. Hold on a second. I'm trying to get it to.
Okay.
But it's
well, yeah.
freezing.
What he's dealing with here, his dining / living room area is about 12 feet by 14 feet. And directly behind that is a kitchen of very similar size. So he's sort of dealing with about a 14-foot wide space by about 24 feet long. Yeah. And then there's also an open area just adjacent to the kitchen, which has like washer, dryer, and a closet and stuff like that. So all totaled up, I calculated, assuming he has around an 8-foot ceiling, which it probably is in an apartment, he's dealing with maybe around 3,000, slightly more than 3,000 cubic feet in total of open air space. And when it comes to setting up a 2-channel system, I mean, what you're hoping to do is have it be pretty symmetrical so that the left speaker is about as close to a wall as the right speaker is. That would be nice rather than having the left speaker, say, very close to a wall and then the right speaker with the kitchen next to it with a big open space, because that does affect your first reflections and it creates a situation
where... Did he say what he's using this for? Is it movies and TV and everything?
He said mostly music, but also TV and
okay,
movies.
So that means he has to have a TV between the two, because if he didn't have to have a TV between the two, this is a lot easier. You know? This is a lot easier.
Because you could just move them to get out the balcony door if you ever need to.
No, I can't look at the stupid thing because every time I try to go to my browser, it almost crashes my computer.
Okay.
So
well, essentially,
I saw it. I know what it kind of looks like, but
yeah.
So if you're
essentially, he only has one wall, one continuous wall, which is if you were looking at the one continuous wall he has, to the right would be the kitchen.
Yeah, and then the left would be the balcony, and behind him would be the bedroom.
The bedroom, yeah. So that is the only continuous wall that does not have a door or a big opening, because obviously the side on the kitchen is just a big opening. There is the bedroom on one side, and there's the balcony door on the other. So I'll just say, if you never use that balcony and you can leave that door closed all the time... The diagram shows it as a swinging door, which seems odd to me, because balcony doors are usually sliding doors, in which case that even wouldn't be a problem.
It could be a French door or something.
It could be an opening door. But if you never use that balcony, I would actually set up the speakers along the wall that has the balcony entrance, because that will allow you to have the same distance to walls for your 2 speakers. But if that is not a possibility because you want to be able to get out onto your balcony without moving a speaker out of the way, you really only have one choice, which is that one continuous wall, in which case I would just say get some absorption on that, what will become your left side wall, which is where the balcony entrance is, so that it somewhat approximates the weaker reflections that'll be having to go through your kitchen in order to reflect off something.
Yeah, and then you're going to be sitting off center too, because if
Yep.
I remember correctly, you have to then tuck the couch up into the corner to get away from the door so that you can get in and out of your bedroom. So,
I mean, the only other thing he could do is set up his speakers in front of his kitchen. Like, he would face his kitchen to listen to his speakers.
You'd be looking at the back of speakers and the back of the TV and all the wires and stuff like that. That's not happening.
So
that's just ridiculous.
That's about all we can say. There's limited setup options here.
And as far as subwoofers go, if you do face it towards the balcony, you could put one to the left and to the right of you is where I would put them. I'd put them that way. Cheat them as far back into the room as possible. Yeah,
because you're really only going to have one standing wave that you can address, which will be the standing wave going between your one continuous wall and the bedroom wall.
Yeah.
There will be a standing wave going back and forth between those 2 walls, so if you could put the 2 subwoofers on those 2 walls, they will essentially eliminate that standing wave for you, and that would be optimal. That will still be the optimal placement, even if you set up your speakers along the single continuous wall that you have. They would just become a front and back subwoofer in that case. Those would be the best places to put them. It looks like you could.
Yeah. Wait a second. He had another question. He does have another question. Finally, when he does add the 2 subwoofers later, which subs would we recommend for his room size?
Mm-hmm.
Where would
Oh,
where would be
sorry.
the position? We already answered that one.
Yeah.
Where to position them, and what can he do to avoid bothering his neighbors? Don't turn them too loud.
And
Get a sub, dude.
decouple the heck out of them as much as you can. Make sure
But
they are not in contact with the
yeah.
floor.
Now, you said 3,000
About 3,000 cubic feet.
cubic feet. So, what do we think about the 2,000?
Oh, that's overkill, man. You don't even need the 2000 series. Like, this is in SVS's lineup. I'd say the PB 1000s would be absolutely adequate.
Yeah, those are big. I bet he wants smaller than
big.
that.
Yeah, if you wanted sealed, SB 2000s for sealed would be very nice.
That's what I would go with. Yeah, if you want the smaller ones.
I would also say
bigger ones you can always get something big that'll play loud, but the small. If you were going, I bet apartment he's thinking small, and I'd be the PB the SB 2000s would be my choice.
The SB 1000s I would hesitate on. I don't think they quite have the output that you would need for a 3,000 cubic foot room, because that is technically a large room as far as cubic feet goes. Just barely, but it is.
The other thing is that the fact that he's living in the apartment tells me, and that he's got RAL, the tower speakers, means that at some point he's thinking in the future he's going to be bumping up to something a little bit bigger.
Yeah, and he's not afraid of spending a little bit of money, clearly. It's not like he's asking for the cheapest choice. So yeah, SB 2000s would be very nice. I would say like in HSU's lineup, even the STF2s, honestly, in a low volume output setting, they wouldn't be a horrible choice. But SB 2000s is where I'd go.
Bobby from Twitter wants to know if there are any 4K Ultra HD TVs or UHD TVs that will make regular DVDs look good. They all will, or they all could, provided that something else is doing the
upscaling,
converting for it. Okay, if anything else, if you connected it up to some sort of really good upscaler, like I assume Oppo is going to put out at some point, then yes, they will all do it. Every single one of them.
If you just got an Oppo Blu-ray player, those will upscale to 4K. So that would be great. Even if you got a higher end AV receiver that uses good quality upscaling, that would be okay. But just in terms of the TVs by themselves, I mean, first of all, I have to give the big caveat, which is I would still not recommend anybody buy a 4K ultra high definition TV right now, because because more pixels is like so meaningless. Just more pixels. Who cares? I am definitely waiting for the ones that have high dynamic range and the wide color gamut. That's what is important. Now, there are the Samsung SUHD TVs, their top 2-tier models, the JS 9500 and 9000 series. Very expensive, all of them curved, which is stupid. But they are the only TVs out there right now that can actually accept a high dynamic range signal from anything other than their built-in apps. Because there are a couple of other TVs from other brands that say, oh, we're getting high dynamic range upgrades, but it will only work for their built-in apps. They have no way of accepting it through an HDMI port. So yay for them. So Samsung's like the only choice right this second, and they're curved. They're so dumb.
I actually overheard somebody talking to his friend about his new curved TV and how it wraps around him, and it's so much better than a regular TV. I'm just like,
the marketing worked on that guy.
Do the people that are sitting like off to the side think the same thing you're thinking, or are they thinking they really wish that TV was flat and that was a good reason why we made TVs flat to begin with? No. Well, I want to go back to the initial question, which is, can 4K ultra high definition TVs make DVDs look good? There are, like, if you look at the very entry level HD TVs, when they first started off, like the very early Westinghouse, like the first really true 1080p displays, they had real problems, like problems that were hard for calibrators to fix, but you could still get it looking pretty good. And if you paired it with something that did the scaling for it, all it's doing is putting out the picture that you're telling it to. You say, put this pixel here and make it this color. Now put this pixel here and make it this color. You're not having the TV do anything, okay? If you think about it that way, most ultra high definition TVs will be able to take an already scaled image and make it look fantastic. Okay. The problem is when you ask it to also do the scaling and you spent the least amount of money possible on that thing.
Yeah,
because
I
that
will
where the
just
first thing
say,
that goes is that the scalers inside of it is the first thing they get rid of.
yeah, yeah, I will just say in those regards, Sony's built-in upscalers inside of their UHD TVs tend to be the best ones
Yeah.
as far as the mass market brands out there right now. They do a good job, but Sony doesn't have any TVs that do high dynamic range and wide color gamut. They do have one that's getting a high dynamic range upgrade, but again, only for its own built-in apps, no external sources. So,
The
just
Samsung ones in
wait.
the past I've dealt with have been okay. You know, they do the
Okay,
minimum. They
the
do
LGs are awful. I don't know what LG uses. They must get the cheapest thing possible. Man, do those look bad.
the point is that you're probably going to have something better that scales for you
Yeah.
than your display. Your display should really do nothing but just put a picture on the
If you have a
screen, and
lot
you
of
should do everything
DVDs,
else someplace else.
yeah, if you have a lot of DVDs that you're, why don't you just invest in an Oppo anyway? Because you're certainly using an HD TV, if not a UHD TV, and just upscaling the DVDs to even HD resolution through an Oppo. That's as good as it's gonna get. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. All right. Well, we're going with Roche, Rock,
yeah, could be Rock.
Rock, or Roche. Rock. I'm going with Rock. I like Rock
Okay.
better. Rock went back and listened to our episode 436, where we gave our suggestions. 436?
That was the number he gave.
I don't think that's right. I think we're on 431 right now. So maybe 420. I don't know. Maybe we're on 440. I think we're on 440. I think I might have misnamed this one. I am okay. Whatever. Anyways, he went back and listened to some episode where we gave our suggestions on $10,000 pair speakers. Rock would simply like to know our favorite ever two-channel setup that we've heard so far in our lives. I've already discussed mine a number of times. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm just gonna say the one that sticks out in my memory the most, which was Focal's self-powered studio monitors, their SM11 series, which they don't even make anymore. But that was their flagship at the time. Those they will forever stick out in my memory because I have never heard tiniest little details rendered so bare as when I heard those. And that was my first exposure to beryllium tweeter speakers. And I said, oh, well, that's new and interesting. Now, I don't even know if I could say they had the best imaging ever because this was in a studio type setup. Everything was focused to a single listening position and being used for mixing. But it was a remarkable experience because I was like, "Whoa!" I was hearing details I don't even hear in my in-ear monitors. It was just like ridiculous resolving capability from those speakers. So that's the one for me.
I've already talked about it a number of times in the past. I'm not going to beat a dead horse with it, but inner sound electrostatic speakers were the best that I've ever heard. Just for the same reason that Rob said, it was just an amazing. But for me, yes, there were a lot of other things going on, but it was just the imaging, the way that it could place an image in a three-dimensional place, coming from inside my head, in front of my face, behind me, above me, below me. I mean, those speakers could put a sound anywhere, and it was amazing to hear. Now, yes, I've heard electrostatic speakers and planar speakers since then, and they do those image very well. But with that speaker in that room that I was in, which was a listening room at a high end salon, I guess I want to call it, but it was also the choice of music. He chose some music that had a lot of pans, front, back, left, right, up, down, all over the place. And that really showed off the speaker itself. And in other times, a lot of times what they do is they play like female vocalists. Like, yes, it sounds like she's right here in the room. I've heard that before. It sounds better than other things I've heard, but nothing sounded the way that this has sounded to me. I know that I'll have a better listening experience in the future. I'm hoping to have one pretty soon, but because I want to go to a couple of places nearby. But to date, that's still my best.
Were those more than $10,000 a
30?
pair?
Oh, those are 30 grand. But he didn't say that. He asked for my best.
No,
experience.
I know. I was just wondering.
Yeah, those are 30 grand a pair.
All right.
I think that's what I remember.
Yeah, the SM11s were only $9,000 a pair. Only.
Only.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I've heard Gene's. I've not heard his newest speakers. I've heard the T30s. When he had them, and they were really impressive too. But did not have that imaging. And Gene's room is huge. And when I was sitting so far away, and there was other people, we were always doing some other things. So it was, it wasn't like a serious listening session that I saw. Ted. The other thing is that Gene does not relinquish the remote, so I'm not going to control anything.
And he's a larger man than you, so you're not wrestling it away from him.
That is true. Ted, we haven't heard from Ted in a while. He's the
Yeah.
creator of our outro music.
Thank you, Ted.
So which we appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't heard from him in a long time. I see his posts on Facebook. We're Facebook friends, so I see his posts on Facebook. He posts about his kids a lot. He's happy that AB Rant is still going strong. We are too. Thank you. He is beginning his planning to upgrade his home theater. He'd like to know our opinions on coaxial or concentric driver speakers.
We should mention the difference first, because there is a difference.
Go ahead. Mention the difference.
Sure. Coaxial means they share an axis. So that is when you have a woofer and then you have a tweeter in front of that woofer, centered. So they are sharing that axis. Concentric means that the tweeter is embedded right inside of the woofer, so that the woofer is concentric to the tweeter. They're going right around each other. So there is a difference. Like Andrew,
used interchangeably. Usually,
sometimes they are. Yeah, but
like if you went up to and somebody said, "Oh, Kef, they have a coaxial driver design," you would know what they were.
Well,
talking about.
Concentric is coaxial, but coaxial is not necessarily concentric.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Andrew Jones talks about this sometimes because a coaxial driver where the tweeter is just hovering in front of the woofer, it does tend to have intermodulation distortion problems because you have sound waves where both that woofer and that tweeter are producing the same sound wave, but there is this gap between the two of them. So you get some little phase cancellation issues going on there. Whereas the concentric driver, the woofer ends up acting as a horn for the tweeter.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on there.
Gene has always been concerned about concentric drivers because of thermal compression, which can be an issue, especially at louder volumes. But Ted, I have said this about every time somebody asks me a question about what do you think about this type of speaker or this type of driver material or this kind of wood to make stuff out of. I don't care. I don't care.
As long as it's done properly.
A speaker designer does what they're comfortable with. If they're comfortable with concentric or coaxial drivers, that's what they're going to use. If they're comfortable with using bamboo, that's what they're going to use. If they're comfortable with aluminum tweeters versus beryllium tweeters versus ribbon tweeters versus blah, they're going to choose what they're comfortable with, and that's their strength. So if you say, I'm going to buy a speaker simply because it has a specific driver design, well, you can find a good one there, but limiting yourself because you think that aluminum drivers sound metallic is really selling it short, because it doesn't sound any more metallic than anything else. Badly designed speakers are going to sound bad. Well-designed speakers are sound as good as they can sound given the materials.
Yeah, the one sort of inherent, I would call it an advantage, but it's really just a characteristic of concentric drivers, is because you have that tweeter embedded right in the middle of the woofer, and that woofer does end up acting as a horn for the tweeter, you do get very similar dispersion of the treble and the mid-range, because they are all being funneled out of that horn shape of the woofer. It is acting as the waveguide for the tweeter. So that's the reason why designers who use concentric drivers like them, because you're not having a situation where the dispersion of the tweeter is different from the dispersion of the mid-range driver. They are sharing that same dispersion. So that's the characteristic that you're looking for there. Also, because it's acting as a little bit of a horn, what you give up in thermal compression, you gain back in efficiency, because you have now a horn around the tweeter. So
at the same time, you also end up with a speaker that tends to be a little bit more directional. So that can be good or bad depending on your situation. If you want a really, really good off-axis response, you're probably not going to be looking at this type of driver arrangement.
What you'll tend to find is you have sort of a cone where it's very uniform within that cone, and then there is a more distinct transition. Like you can sort of almost like hear the edge of the cone of sound, where the timbre changes pretty drastically, pretty quickly as soon as you cross out of that cone, which is sort of the dispersion of that woofer. So whereas other speakers, it might be a much more gradual shift as you move farther and farther to the side. Yeah.
I lost where we were. There we are.
Oh, I see.
Okay. So yeah, there you go, Ted. If you want to buy a speaker that's like that, that's fine. If you're just interested, well, then there you go. It's just another driver topology that is sometimes used. Jason wanted to confirm that monoprice HDMI switches can work perfectly well with Harmony remotes. As we mentioned, ones that come with a remote that has dedicated buttons for each HDMI input make it very easy to use a Harmony remote instead. Jason says that he started off using 28 gauge HDMI cables. Now he would like to get, and he would occasionally get picture dropouts or pixelation. He switched to thicker 24 gauge HDMI cables and has worked perfectly ever since. The 28 gauge cable still carried HDMI LLC's licensing for quote unquote standard speed, unquote. So how come they didn't work? He didn't say how long they were. So
no. Yeah, there is an issue because that licensing is supposed to say here is the amount of bandwidth that these cables will pass. Now, that is done in batch testing. It is not done individually for every single cable that goes out there. So that's one of the issues. The other part is standard speed is pretty limited. It was actually meant for HD signals, the original HD signals, which were 720p and 1080i.
Right.
Even 1080p, particularly once you get sort of up to the maximum length where it's still rated for standard speed, even 1080p can trip it up. 1080p 24 shouldn't, but 1080p 60 could. That's 60 frames a second instead of only 24 frames a second. So that alone could be the issue. Even more, it's probably just these are very inexpensive cables. They are only batch tested. In fact, when they first get the license, all they do is send one sample of that cable. And that's what gets licensed, and they're like, "Yep, every other one will be the same."
We promise. We promise.
Yeah, it can be a little bit lax there, but the good news is you only spent like 38 cents on each one of them, so
I bet you spent more than that.
not much. Maybe a buck
really?
38.
Okay, I don't even care. Deepon has a large dedicated theater room, 26 by 20 by 12, with 9 theater recliners. The room is sound isolated and acoustically treated. He's made room for 13 speakers, or 9.4.4.
Yeah.
Before subwoofers, baby.
Oh, yeah.
And he's building all the speakers himself, okay, including 2 18-inch subwoofers behind the screen up front and 2 more 10-inch subwoofers going the same columns as his surround speakers.
So not quite all 4 corners.
Yeah.
But at least they're not all up on the front wall.
Yeah, I kind of wish if you're going to design this yourself, dude, why don't you have them symmetrically placed? Please think about it. Anyways,
maybe the 218s are like co-located in the middle up front. I didn't quite see.
No, they're underneath the surrounds. So
no, the 218 drivers that he wants to have behind his screen. Let me see if it's in his diagram.
I didn't see it in there. I can't.
Yeah, I don't see the subs in the diagram, so maybe he was going to co-locate them right in the middle underneath his center channel. Maybe. I doubt it, but maybe.
Well, that doesn't make it any better. It makes it worse.
It's a little better.
Now he's got 3 subs instead of 2.
Yeah.
I mean, instead of 4. Anyways. Think about all 4 corners, dude. Just saying. Where were we? The idea is to have all the speakers built in so they're not visually distracting. They are high efficiency design so they can handle his 6,000 plus cubic foot room. All that aside, he doesn't actually know how the speakers will sound yet. It's encouraging.
Because he's building them.
He already has 1 pair of Revel Ultima 2 Salon 2 speakers and a 500 watts per channel stereo amp to power them. There's a chance they will end up sounding better than his DIY speakers.
They'll sound different because they are not a high efficiency design at all.
Yeah,
those ones.
I don't know.
And they're very low impedance too.
Is he like? Did he indicate that he's like really good at building speakers? He's been doing this, or is this like his first go at it? I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, because this has sounded very sort of like I'm gonna build. Like,
well, he's
everything else I'm fine with, but building the speakers.
He said he likes to do a lot of projects himself, so I'm gonna take that to mean he's probably tried the things before. Maybe not to this scale, but I'm making that inference.
I like to do a lot of things myself too. I'm not gonna build myself a car. Okay, I would like to.
Well, how about a motorcycle? You got to do that, or your neighbor will give you the stink eye.
Ah, he's moving away anyways.
Oh, okay.
He gives me the stink eye anyway, so stink eye.
Yeah, when you build your first one, he's gonna be like, "Oh, what a piece of junk." So
I know.
No winning over.
Yeah, there's really no. Anyways, okay, so there's a chance that they will end up sounding better in his DIY speakers. If you're really good at this sort of stuff, then maybe not. But if not, I think they may have a little bit of experience on you. I don't know. We'll see. If it turns out to be a case, we'd like to be able to use them for two-channel music, but he would still want to use his subwoofers when doing so. It's not a problem.
Uh-huh.
He is planning on using the Denon AVRX 7200WA as his receiver and processors. Anyway, he could use his 13 DIY speakers for movies and then use Revell speakers for two-channel. AB switch. They have an AB switch on that one, but use the AB switch on with a full range for the B as well.
Well, the problem with that one interesting thing that the AVRX 7200 can do is that you can have separate settings for two-channel output versus surround sound output. That is available in the menus, and you can actually connect a second set of front speakers that you will only use for two-channel, which still use the subwoofers. All of that is possible. However, if you do that, you can only use a maximum of 9 speakers for the surround sound setup.
Which is what he wants to do anyways.
Well, he wants to use 11. He's got 13 speakers, which means he'll be switching between using those front wides, surround backs, and the pairs of overheads, right? So, I mean, first of all, there's no way you can actually use all 13 of the do-it-yourself speakers at once, not with the AVRX 7200. Only 11 speakers can ever play at once out of that one. So that's one thing. And then, on top of that, if you have a second pair of front speakers, then all of a sudden the X7200 tops out at 9. Which would be a little bit of a waste if you have 13 speakers installed. So there's another way to do this, which would be to use the Zone 2, because there are Zone 2 pre-outs.
And then, yeah.
Now, if you were to do that, and you still want to use the subwoofers, because those are just going to be full-range signals being sent out, you would need your subwoofers to have their own crossover. Because you could just wire the Zone 2 pre-outs into a crossover, like, say, a mini DSP. And then you could feed the output of the mini DSP. Now, he's building his own subwoofer, so this is a little bit tricky because lots of subwoofers you buy have a right and left input, which would be fine because you could use the regular subwoofer outputs of the AV receiver to feed, say, the right input, and then you could use the output from the mini DSP to feed the left input. Now, the left input would only ever be active when you're using Zone 2, so that's fine. The subwoofers don't care. They're getting one signal at a time, so that all works. So that would be one way to do it. You could use the Zone 2 pre-outs. You'd feed them into a crossover. I would easily recommend the mini DSP because it's only $100. But it'll just mean when you build your do-it-yourself subwoofers, make sure you give them 2 inputs, which shouldn't be hard. There should be plenty of designs that let you have a left and right input to each sub.
Well, he's probably using a standalone amp. He's building them into the wall.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So it's probably how he's doing it. But not all amps have it. You know, some amps only have
if it's a mono amplifier for each one or something.
Yeah, which means you have to Y split it into it. This is getting all very complicated.
Yeah.
But, hey, if you like the DIY, dude, these are the kind of problems you're going to run into. So I'm very interested to know how you came to the conclusion that you were going to build your own speaker. So the rest of it, I'm completely 100% okay.
I mean, he wants it all built in to, cabinetry and columns and things like that.
Apparently not that connected to it. He's about to put these 2 big old speakers in the middle of his room.
I sort of...
where are you going to put these things where they're not in front of the speakers that you're going to have built into the wall? That's what I want to know.
Well, yeah, he was mentioning how if the Revel Salon 2s sound substantially better than his do-it-yourself speakers, he might even end up wanting to use them as part of his surround sound setup. I'm like, that would be very difficult because
a problem because temper matching is
nigh
impossible.
And you've got high efficiency, which is like the opposite of the Salon 2. The Salon 2s are like low efficiency if they're anything. For towers that size, they're surprisingly low efficiency. So I would definitely shy away from using them as your front, left, right speakers for your surround sound setup. But if you want to use them just as dedicated 2-channel, then the Zone 2 pre-outs will be your friends. Yeah. I think that's it. I think we covered it.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about this. So so he's going to use a mini DS. Are the Revel 2s? Do they have he's already got an amp for it. Okay, wait, sorry.
Yeah, he's already got amps for the Revels.
Did we answer all of that hot mess?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. John found someone selling a pair of Martin Logan SL3 speakers at a good price. These are big, tall monster ones.
They are. They're discontinued at this point, but they're big electrostatic speakers.
Big electrostatic speakers. They were being used in a very nice 2-channel setup, but John uses a 7.1 speaker setup. These electrostatic speakers are much nicer than the speakers he has right now, John says, but he's wondering if there's any way to incorporate the SL3s into his system while still using his other speakers.
We kind of just mentioned something along those
I think
lines.
this question has been asked and answered without even
and
being asked.
and this even more so.
Yeah, no kidding. He figures a new center speaker would be a minimum requirement, but he wouldn't want to spend more than $500 on. And Martin Logan's current matching center speakers cost $2,000 or more. The SL3s also appeared to have a powered subwoofers built into them. If he were to get them, should he continue using his HSU VTF2 subs? And last but not least, should he buy these SL3? Well, if I had a chance to buy some SL3s, I'd buy them. If they were a good price,
Right.
I'd buy them, and I'd find a way to use them. I'd put them someplace to use them. Now, you are not going to be able to put them in your home theater and just sort of like magically integrate them into everything else.
Yeah, these are like the antithesis of a timbre match in every conceivable way.
It really is. It really is. And you're not going to find a $500 speaker to put up front with these things that's going to in any way come close to timbre matching. You want these things to be a 2-channel setup. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
you
what
really
you
do
want.
because they're kind of only good for one listening position anyway.
Yeah.
They're not even good for a couch.
Yeah. So, this is the sort of thing where you like flag them on the outside of the speakers that you have right now and point them right at your head. So, where you sit, point them right at your head. And then when you want somebody else to listen to them, move over and let them sit there because that's what it's going to take. All right.
Yup.
Now, you're still going to run them with a crossover.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And you're going to use your subs still. All right.
Yep.
So we'll have to figure out how to make all that work. But yes,
Mini DSP.
you do want to use this you do want to use their internal quote unquote subwoofers because these things that I doubt I didn't look at the specs because stupid computer hates me. But I'm sure that panel up front is not reaching all the way down to 80.
That's unlikely with an electrostatic panel, even
So
that size.
whatever is going on with that woofer is taking the panel down to as low as it can go. You want it to get down to at least 80 so that you can cross it over into your subwoofers.
Yeah, actually, there's a bit of confusion here because it's not a powered subwoofer that's built into the SL3s. It is a bass driver. There is a plug because the electrostatic part of the speaker needs electrical power out of the wall outlet to charge its stators.
Yes.
So it is not a powered subwoofer built in. It's just a bass driver. That's what it is. So, I mean, they're claiming that the speaker overall plays down to 30 hertz, and it's a 10-inch driver that's in there. So, it's kind of subwoofer-ish, but still, we come back to the old thing of the positioning is not going to be correct. So you always want to continue using your pair of subwoofers. You always want to cross over the speakers. So yeah, don't be confused that these are somehow subwoofers that will outperform your HSU VTF2s. They're bass drivers and they won't. And the plugs are for the electrostatic part.
Yes, use them just like you would use normal speakers, but don't try to make them. I mean, you can try to put them in your home theater system and make them work for your home theater system.
They cross over at 250 hertz to those
it.
bass drivers.
That's
so
what I
there you
figured.
go. They need to be working. You need those bass drivers.
Yeah, or you have to cross.
they're
one
not
really
subs.
Stupid high. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Lee. Lee's room is 16 and a half feet long, and he has 7. So we don't need to know how wide. And a 7.2 speaker setup. He says it's 2.2 because of our brainwashing has worked on him. Don't
Good.
brainwash.
You're happier for it.
That's right. Not only are you happier for it, but we're telling you you're happier for it, so you're doubly happier for
That's
it.
right.
He also has a 65-inch Panasonic Plasma. He just bought an Epson 3500 projector, and he wants to know what screen to get for it. His walls are white, but he can block out any sunlight coming in with blackout curtains. He is apparently single. He wants to know if he should move his plasma to the bedroom and use a fixed frame screen, or if he should get an acoustically transparent drop-down screen and leave the plasma on the wall behind it. And how should he work out what size screen to get? First of all, the question that popped in my mind is why does he need acoustically transparent to drop down in front of his plasma?
Well, perhaps he has his center channel speaker already mounted right below his plasma. That's a very common setup.
Yeah, but the screen's not going to go all the way down to the floor. So you just have the screen only come down as low as... Well, anyways, I don't necessarily think that you have to have acoustically transparent. You know,
I'm
as
I'm
long as
always in favor of acoustically transparent because in all aspects, if it's away from the wall, if it's not like flush mounted onto the wall, which a lot of fixed frame projector screens will be, in which case it's just mimicking acoustically the wall anyway. But as soon as you have some distance between the screen and the wall, I always favor acoustically transparent
yeah, but you
because
also get some light bleed behind it as
yeah, a little
well,
bit.
and that's
If
the
you get a good one, it's all
well,
right.
you're still going to get some light bleed behind it, and that could be an issue. And it's just acoustically transparent. Yes, they're very, very good, but it's
Hmm.
not blocking back 100% of the light. So, or at least as much as of the light as a solids backing would. Anyways, regardless,
Hmm.
I just thought that was weird that it went from fixed to acoustically transparent. Once to move his plasma plasma. Oh, working out what size to get.
Yeah,
Well, we've discussed this a number of times. Rob will give you all the different percentages of degrees and all that crap.
I will.
But you need to know what size screen you like. How do you know what size screen you like? Go to the movies. We've talked about this a number of times. Go to the movies. You go to the movies and you sit at the movies in the place that you like best. And
Hmm.
if you have to move, go to a movie that people have. Go to see Avengers 2 again, and
Yeah.
so that you can move around and not really bug anybody. And you can get to the seat where you're like, this is the perfect size for me. And
Hmm.
then when this movie is done, or if there's nobody in there during the movie, walk down the stairs, count the number of steps down to the stairs, and then walk across the screen, from one end to the other, pace off between the screen, and say, okay, I like this many steps towards the screen and this many steps across the screen, and get that percentage, that ratio of
Hmm.
how close you are to how far across it is, and say how much I like. So just say it's, I don't know, 20 steps down and 40 steps across. All right, let's say 30 steps across, right?
Hmm.
So it's what is that? 2/3 ratio. So if you're 8 feet from your screen at home, or even better, 10 feet from your screen at home, you want one that's 15 feet across. So you figure out what the diagonal is of that, and that's what you want.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I'm coming at it from the side of if you're going to go for a two-screen setup, which would be the scenario where he keeps his plasma in the room and then has a screen that comes down in front of it. If you're doing that, then the idea would be to have your 65-inch plasma be the size that you like for watching HD TV. So for watching regular 16:9 aspect ratio content, that's the screen size you like, in which case it should be filling at least a 30-degree field of view if you're following the SEMPTE standards, maybe a little bit more, maybe a touch less, but that would be the ideal. If that's filling that field of view and you like that for 16:9, then what you can do is get a projection screen that would come down in front of it that would be the same height as the 65-inch plasma when you're watching CinemaScope, when you're watching 2.35:1 content. So it would have the same height as the plasma, but it would just be wider when you're watching CinemaScope. If you did that, it ends up being about a 90-inch screen. Still 16:9 for the projection screen, but it'd be about 90. So a standard size is 92. So if you were to drop a 92-inch projection screen down in front of your 65-inch plasma, you'd roughly get something where CinemaScope movies have the same height as your plasma image. Then if you watch something that was in 16:9, like say an IMAX feature, it would be huge because it would be that CinemaScope width and then get even taller. I really like that setup because it gives you the option of watching that's anything 16:9 on your plasma and then watching things that are in CinemaScope on your projection screen. And you get to keep the same height. But I'm betting that the whole reason he got a projector is because he's looking at a 65-inch plasma and thinking that's a little small.
That's what. Yes.
So, because he said his room is 16.5 feet long, but he didn't actually say how far away he's sitting from his TV. He mentioned that he is fairly far away from his back wall. I don't know how much exactly that means, but he's not pressed. He's
Yeah.
not pressed right up against his back wall. We know he's not 16
He's
and a half
probably at
feet
least 10
away.
feet away from that screen.
Yeah.
That 65-inch screen.
Yeah.
That's certainly not going to be big enough.
So, if you're 10, perhaps even 12 feet away from a 65-inch screen, that's not big enough. That's not big enough to give you a 30-degree field of view. You need to be about slightly less than 8 feet away from a 65-inch screen to get even just a 30-degree field of view.
Which puts him right in the middle of the room. If you're sitting there,
Yeah.
stop sitting there, because that is a terrible place acoustically to sit.
Well, at least he's
Don't
got two
sit
subs. So he's helping himself out in at least one direction as long as he has them across the room from him. He says we brainwashed him, so he must have them across the room from one another. Must be the case.
You need 100, 95, 100, 90, 90, 100 inches. If I'm sitting 10 feet away,
Yeah.
I'm looking at least 90.
Yeah, well, the thing is, once you have the projection screen as your only screen, now you're into the situation where you still want 16 by 9 content to not look ridiculous, because if that's your only screen, you're still in the situation where CinemaScope is actually a smaller image than 16 by 9 because you had to crop off the top and the bottom to create the CinemaScope aspect ratio. So if you're doing that, I don't think you want to go to the size of, well, 16 by 9 now looks like IMAX and 2.35 to 1 CinemaScope looks more or less the way I want it. You have to compromise a little bit so that 16 by 9 doesn't look ridiculous. So yeah, I think somewhere in the 92 to 106 inch, which are very standard sizes, somewhere in that range is going to be about right for you. And if you're thinking my 65-inch plasma, where it is right now for how far away I'm sitting, looks a little small to me, then you're gonna want to go towards the 100 or 106-inch screen size, because 92 is giving you the same height as your 65-inch plasma right now for CinemaScope.
Yeah. All right. Does that answer all those questions?
Well, what screen should he get? Yeah.
Oh, did you say that?
White walls. White walls are,
he's not gonna paint because it's an apartment, right? Or something.
That's right.
Like that.
Yeah, he's not going to paint. So, I mean, you don't have a bunch of ambient light coming in, but you do have white walls. So, I mean, if you get your standard 1.0 gain screen, it is going to wash out a little. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. The light is going to reflect around those white walls and come back onto the screen. So, even though I do like retroreflective when there's ambient light, I will 100% agree with Tom's recommendation here, which is if you get just a little bit of gain, that will focus the light from the projector a little bit back more towards the center as opposed to just flashing it all off to the sides like a 1.0 gain screen would do. So like a 1.2, 1.3 gain screen would probably work really well here.
Yeah, 1.2. Michael R. This is our Michael R 2.0. We have another Michael R. We're up
and not even just R, like the same last name, which we don't mention on the show. But yeah, so it got a little confusing because I saw the name, like, oh, hey, it's Michael. And then I was like, this isn't Michael's. Oh, it's a new Michael R. Different guy.
2.0. Maybe he's the one from the future. Anyways, he got a Power Sound Audio XV15 sub. I guess it's got a 15-inch driver.
That's a vented 15. That's what that is.
Jesus. His theater area is only 13 by 17. Holy crap! Were you sitting on it?
But
it has two permanent openings in other parts of his house. One at the right front of his theater area, and the other at the rear left. He already had a Polk Audio PSW 505. Does that have a 5-inch driver? Subwoofer.
No. That would be awesome. That's Bose level quality there.
This is the least needed part of a sentence that has been read so far. Anyways, let me start. I'll read the beginning part again. He already has a Polk Audio PSW 505 subwoofer, but that is a much less capable sub. Do you think? Do you think?
I mean,
it's less capable than the vented 15-inch sub from Power Sound Audio. The people who the only ones that make bigger subs than them are people who are making them for literal theaters. Yes, I thank you. It's less powerful. You think? Yes.
JTR has a bigger sub than Power Sound Audio.
Shut up. Should he use that Polk? No.
Outdoors.
Do not use that Polk with that thing. Are you kidding me?
Well, we always tell people to use two subs.
Not
so he's
that
not wrong
sub.
for asking.
What is a 505? What is it? It's got 50.
It's a 12-inch. It's a 12-inch with a peak power output of 300 watts. Peak power output.
So it's a 50 watts. A 50-watt amp is what that is. That's what the 50 is, and there's a 5-inch driver. I don't care what they say. Or maybe 5 millimeter excursion. Is that what it's? A 50, 55, 5005. Anyways,
it's not an XP15.
Okay. Yeah, you're better off just using the new sub alone. Okay.
Yeah.
I have no idea why you got such a big sub, but that is pretty awesome, dude.
Well, I mean, he might be trying to pressurize his whole darn house because he's got those two openings diagonally across his room.
Well, he's got the other two diagonal corners to buy another one of these things and put it in the
There you go.
No, yeah, you do not need to use that Polk Audio. It's never going to keep up, and all it's going to do is distort and create distortions.
It doesn't play nearly as low. It doesn't play nearly as loud. Not even remotely close. So it's holding you back. It is the weak link.
It is the anchor around your good sonic bass. He'd also like to know if putting bass traps in the two vertical corners of his corners of his theater would help and be a good investment. Well, it certainly won't hurt.
Yeah.
That's for sure. It's
Yeah, I mean,
always base trapping is always a good thing. Yeah.
when you have big openings like this to the room, you're not trapping the base.
It's
It
getting
has
out.
an area to escape. So, base trapping is about reducing reverberation. Because if you have an enclosed room, then the sound waves are just going to bounce around that room until they naturally dissipate just from the distance they've traveled. And that distance is bouncing back and forth between your walls. But when they have an outlet, it's like air pressure or water pressure. It has an escape valve. So I'm not entirely sure that those bass traps are going to make a huge difference
I doubt
because
it.
you already have the best bass trap of all, which is a big, gigantic open volume of air.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's not something where I'd be like, oh, you must put bass traps in there. I don't actually think it's going to make a tremendous difference, if I'm being honest.
I gotta assume that he's planning on moving into a much bigger space in some place in the future, and that's why he's got this monster sub.
Well, the XV15s are on clearance right now, so he might have just been like, hey, good deal.
Did a good deal, the two of them. All right, well, that's the end of that question. That was easy.
Yep.
Scott is interested in the Intel NUC, next unit of computing.
Yeah.
The little puck-like computer that I built. His HGPC and PS3 both recently died, so he's looking to replace them. We'd like to link to detail what the NUC is all about. We're going to give you a link to the Intel. It's on the Intel site. The next unit of computing is basically a little square. I don't know. It's probably a 4-inch square, and it's about maybe 2.5 inches deep. A little thing. It's just got USB ports, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. It's got an HDMI output and display port.
Mini HDMI, right?
Mini HDMI. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah.
And an Ethernet port. It's got IR input and a headphone out.
Okay.
And in fact, I plugged the headphone out into my audio engine A2s, A5s, whatever the heck they are.
Well, with an IR port in that, I mean, it is pretty much good to go for HTPC.
Yeah, it is. So what you'll need is you'll need to buy some sort of drive. So you need some storage. You'll have to buy memory. If you want wireless, you have to buy the wireless card. And when you do that, pay close attention to when you connect it up, because you have to connect it up. It's not hard. I did all this, and I put everything together in an hour, less than an hour.
Yeah.
It's really quite easy to do once you have all the pieces. You're going to connect up, make sure you pay attention to which color wire goes to which output. Once you do that, I didn't have any problems. But the biggest issue is getting an operating system on it. You need to put it on via USB. So you have to have a big enough stick. I think 8 or 16 gigs will do you.
Well, what if you had like an external optical drive and a disc?
That is true.
That would work.
You can
right?
do it that way. You can do it that way. I did
just
not.
put it on a thumb drive.
And nowadays you can get it directly from Microsoft if you're using Windows 8. You get it directly from Microsoft with that goes directly onto the key. You just say install it on where am I installing it? The first time you open it up, and you say you're installing it on a storage medium or a thumb drive, and it'll put it on there ready to go. You'll stick the USB key in there. You'll turn it on. It'll ask you for the whatever the
product
big, long,
key,
stupid product key thing is.
Yep.
And once that's done, dude, if you get a solid state storage like I did, about 10 minutes later, you'll have a functional computer. Now, you will have to turn it off and turn it on about 20 times to get all the updates to get to go.
But that's just Windows.
That's just Windows.
That's not the computer. That's no different.
Yeah, and it's very zippy. I love it. I really do love it. It's quite.
If you're
cool.
building this to be a home theater PC, a Core i3 is entirely sufficient.
Yeah.
There's no need to go unless the one where I would say maybe you want to step up to a Core i5 is if you're doing a lot of video transcoding. So if you're using Plex where you're streaming on the fly to a mobile device, or if you just like to transcode your movies, then a Core i5 is kind of nice to have, and more RAM. Get as much RAM as you can.
I think the most you can put in there is 16.
Probably 16, yeah, because it only has 2 DIMM slots.
I've got 2. I think I put 8 total.
Yeah.
2 4s is what I put.
But if you're mainly using it for playback, an i3 is overkill. And if you're worried at all about the video drivers, don't be, because Intel's Core series drivers for their video out because, of course, it doesn't have a separate video card.
No,
It's just the integrated graphics that's part of the Intel platform. But they are great. They're actually great for video playback. Those drivers that are in there already. So yeah, as a home theater PC, pretty darn nice.
yeah, I'm really happy with it.
Small, quiet.
All right. I guess I don't. It's about time to go, and I don't know if I want to get into this Bruce question right now. But
Oh, well, I mean, there's not much to say.
all right, Bruce. Bruce last week on G Plus was talking to us, and we weren't talking back because he was
Yes.
typing into the little window that was streaming us, and we weren't answering, and that's because we don't answer. This is a podcast recording session. We record, and you listen. And if you want to ask a question, you email it, and then you can listen to your answer when we get around to it. So he didn't quite understand that, which is perfectly reasonable.
Well, yeah, because like over on Home Theater Geeks, sometimes they have question and answer episodes, but they're doing that live. They're looking at their chat room and they're taking questions live as it's happening, and they answer them on the spot. We sometimes do a little research
do that
beforehand.
We do that every week in the Hangouts after
Right,
our
after the
session.
show, yeah.
So that's all there is to that. But once he kind of figured out what was going on, his basic comment was that true high resolution audio does make an audible difference. He says the problem is that very few tracks have the provenance. Is that
Provenance, yeah.
Of actually having been recorded in high resolution and kept that way throughout the entire process. He says high resolution won't work on analog masters. Okay, I mean, I have a feeling that this is not a conversation that's going to really anybody's going to really change their mind.
Right.
Honestly, there is no. I mean,
I just
go ahead. You go first before
I bring it back to something I tweeted out a few weeks ago, which is I get a kick out of the fact that the high resolution audio supporters frequently talk about provenance being important, because if you could actually hear the difference, you wouldn't need to worry about provenance because you'd be able to tell, right? The claim is that high resolution audio makes an audible difference. If that's true, you don't need to worry because you'll be able to tell whether it was ever at a lower sampling rate or ever analog, because it would be audible. And since it isn't, and you are worried about provenance and saying the only way you can tell is if you know for certain it was recorded in at least 9624 and kept at least at that high a sampling rate and bit depth the entire way through. That's the only way you can be sure you're hearing it, and then you'll hear it. If it's like, no, I should be able to tell that with my ears, right? That's the argument.
Well, and then we'll get to the argument of, you don't have high enough quality gear. You don't have this. You don't have that.
No, I'm sorry to say, CD quality, 44.1 sampling, 16 bits. If you really want to get into it, dithering those 16 bits so that you can have the entire 120 decibel range of human hearing before our ears literally just give out and we go deaf. So, okay, we solved this. We solved human audibility in digital form, recording samples of waves. We did it. It's done. There is nowhere else to go. The only reason high-resolution audio exists is, for one, the very legitimate reason of, if you're going to alter the signal, it is good to oversample it so that the changes you can make will not create loss in the original signal. It is a mathematical problem, not a wave recreation problem. That's the legitimate reason for oversampling, is in the editing stage. The only other reason to do it is for marketing purposes, because CD sales are falling, like I said last week, and the only way you're going to sell people on a new music format is by saying it's somehow better than CDs. But it isn't. CDs are acoustically perfect as long as they're mastered correctly, and that's the big difference.
And that's where we come back to what I said. I've said over and over again, you've said it over and over again, is that the real advantage of high res audio or high definition audio, the real advantage is that it makes the people who are mastering it more aware of the fact that people who are buying it care about what they hear. I don't remember, I don't know what song I upvoted on Pandora that my kids playlist now has Beastie Boys on it, which
Okay.
I'm not against the Beastie Boys on general principle. I in the past I've owned their CDs. Their stuff sounds like just garbage. It's just so noisy and just, I mean, the vocals sound recessed way back. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't, I mean, I remember hearing the CDs. To me, it was like that's just the way the Beastie Boys sound. But now that I've been away from it a while, and I've heard it again for the first time in 20 years, I listen to them just like, who that did they pay somebody to make it sound like that? Because that person should be give that money back, because that is terrible. That's just terrible. But it just really sounds really bad, and there's no recovering from that. But in this day and age, if you tell somebody you're mastering for 9624, then they are maybe saying, okay, whoever's going to be hearing this is going to care. Now, if you take that 9624 bit and you mix it, reduce it down to 16, I'm sorry, 44.116,
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, you're not going to hear a difference. Bruce is going to say, no, you could. And I'm going to say, no, you can't. And that's going to be the end of this conversation, because that's where it's going to stop.
Well, I'll just go to Mark Waldrop's own test that they did in conjunction with AVS Forum, because Mark Waldrop over at AIX Records, huge proponent of recording in 9624, keeping it at least 9624 through the entire editing process, doing very little mastering to it, not compressing the dynamic range, all that type of stuff, which is where the real difference is being made, is in not processing it over too much, and then playing it back in 9624. And he, Mark Waldrop, the proponent of all of this, couldn't spot which one was the original and which one was the 44.116. In fact, he got every single one of them wrong. Every single one.
Statistically, that means he likes to.
He actually prefers CD. No, he was guessing because Anyway, there's nothing more to say. Sorry, Bruce. I know you disagree, but
it's fine to disagree. We can all
absolutely.
Go on lives and you can have your
no. It always comes back to I make the hat and bucket argument, which is if I reach into a hat and I pull out a piece of fruit that I really like, and then I reach into a bucket and I pull out a piece of fruit that I really hate, it doesn't mean that hats are better than buckets, right? But if 9 times out of 10 I reach into the hat and pull out a piece of fruit I like, and 9 times out of 10 I reach into the bucket and pull out a piece of fruit I hate, then I'm going to say, well, given the choice, I'm going to choose the hat because it's more likely that I'll get the piece of fruit that I like. Okay, that's saying that the bucket holding the audio, the 9624 audio, which has the better master in it 9 times out of 10 than the CD, that's the one I'll choose because it has the better master in it, not because it was a hat instead of a bucket. That's the argument going on there.
I like that one. That's a good one. the bucket hat theorem.
Yep.
The hat bucket hat. Anyways. All right. We have to bump everybody out next week. Josh, you have a very long. I'm not.
Well, it's not a question; it's a quote. We don't even have to read all of it.
I'm not reading all that. I'm just telling you right now, Josh, it's not happening.
He was upset with us talking about the BBE Sonic Maximizer, even though we were like, "Hey, it's kind of cool. People should check it out." He was not satisfied.
Well, I'm sorry. You're gonna have to go through life disappointed because I'm not reading all that. Jack, Mike, Scott, Infinite Gary with another wall of questions. Joshua, Barney with a wall of questions. And Jonathan.
Oh, Jonathan. Jonathan likes to torture us.
Yes. And I actually read almost that entire thing, Jonathan.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did. I
just saw
I didn't read every word. I skimmed.
I just saw the size of the little scroll bar on the side of the window, and I was like, nope.
And last but not least, James. We will all be bumped to next week. And anybody else who has a question, feel free. Send them in, and we will add you to the bottom of the list. Once again, we want to thank Ray and Lee for supporting us in their own special way, along with Deepon for his donation.
Yes, thank you very much, guys.
All right. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Antry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
The after party will start when I finish what I have to do to the podcast to make sure that my computer doesn't crash while I'm trying to edit.